Welcome to the May 6th meeting of the Planning Board for the discussion of the 2025 ATM zoning bylaw amendments. We will, unless anybody has any other ideas, we'll take each in turn and discuss them so we can make our recommendations. Oh, I guess, sorry. We will start off with administrative business. The first item will be public comment. Public comment is limited to up to 15 minutes with no more than 3 minutes allocated to any one speaker. Public comment is limited to items that are not on the agenda. And right now, our agenda consists of the zoning bylaw amendments and an ATM, and AT&T small cell select board filing. So are there any public comments?
Carol has her hand up.
Okay. Carol Savoy, sorry, we're having trouble in there.
Hi, Carol Savoy, 61 Belknap Street. I'm here to respectfully urge the planning board to pause any changes to combined business zoning. While I understand the goal may be to encourage mixed-use development or economic growth, these zoning changes, especially around parking and business districts, are not minor adjustments. They represent significant shifts that could reshape Concord's long-term character, infrastructure, and livability. Right now, it feels like we're making zoning changes one piece at a time without a clear, comprehensive vision. Concord is already facing major growth. Over 1,100 MBTA housing units have been approved in our village centers, along with large developments on Baker, Forest Ridge, and potentially MCI Concord, Newbury Court, and 2229 Main Street. This could increase our housing stock by 60%. Even that, half of that would be a big impact. Before making further changes, we really need to understand how this growth will affect our roads, schools, water, emergency services, and overall town character. I urge the board to take a strategic pause. Let's absorb the MBTA zoning that's already passed and make sure the state approves it. Focus on zoning for the upcoming MCI RFP and work with the Land Use Committee to determine the best use for key priorities like 2229 Main Street and Peabody School. And let's make sure our infrastructure is prepared for the development already in motion. Changes to combined business zoning are not minor adjustments. They represent significant shifts that could reshape Concord's future. Let's ensure we fully understand the impact of already approved development in town and traffic, schools, town services, and neighborhood livability before moving forward with any additional zoning changes. I urge the board to pause any action on combined business zoning. Thank you.
Thank you. I will note, though, that there have been no MBTA units that have been approved. Those just been rezoned or have an overlay district. So
they've been approved at town meeting as zoning, but the state we've approved them last year in 2024.
No, but there have been you cited 1,100 units. There have been no units that have been proposed as being developed under MBTA overlay district. So it's just an incorrect statement. I'm just correcting for the record.
Oh, okay. Well, let me. So 1,198 units. We are zoned, and that zoning for 1,198 units was approved at town meeting last year, and now it's with the state, and the state has to approve it. That's my understanding of the situation. Right? We had to do 50 acres within a half a mile.
There's capacity for that many units. It doesn't mean that they've been approved in any way. Each individual landowner would have to make a decision of whether or not to make such a development. So it's sort of an apples and oranges thing. Anyway, thank you for the comment. I do appreciate it. And now we will move on to the 2025 ATM zoning bylaw amendments. We'll discuss each in turn and come up with our decision and recommendations for town meeting. So the first one is Article 37, and that is Mark's.
So you'd like me to speak about it? Okay, so, yeah, now we're gonna revise the presentation, okay, and make it more. Gonna start out with, discussion from high level, what the town's trying to accomplish, okay? Reduction in impervious substrates, allowing for, economic vitality through less parking constraints. And then I'm gonna do the slides. to be completely different than what's been done already, okay? Then I'm gonna show the plan that we have now, okay, which is in effect part of the zoning, okay? And the fact that it has to be this to that, okay? And all we're trying to do, and I'm not gonna say it in simple, okay? Then I'll show the next slide that shows it will allow us to do it amongst all of these businesses, okay? And then show the impact that it would have had on that parking lot over there, okay? How we probably could have reduced the number of parking spots at the old paparazzis, okay, if we could have been combined that. All done based upon a transportation analysis. That's the key to it. I don't really want to show all those different slides. I think they're confusing, okay? I think we will have them in abeyance if we need them, but we will show a slide that shows the analysis and how it's done, because that's part of the key to it. And then follow that up with the other slides that talk about how it can be reversed if it doesn't function properly, okay? So that's sort of the gist of it. Now I'll have that presentation to you at the next meeting on the 27th for you to review before we go to town meeting on the 2nd. Okay, so that makes sense. So it's up to you folks. I'm willing to go forward with the proposal as long as you think it's credible and that we should go forward with it. That's your call.
I was wondering, in terms of the discussion that we have, if it would be worthwhile thinking about the fact that we are now instituting a stormwater fund, and that that is going to be based on the impervious area, so that this is, you know, sort of a townwide effort, and that it seems in opposition to the towns wanting to reduce impervious area, that the planning board be requiring unused or, you know,
The
functional.
stormwater would be part of the presentation as well. Okay, when I put that together, I
Okay.
didn't bring it with me, but.
But
yeah,
I just thought that might be.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you already got that.
Another point in favor, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we want to work with people, and it doesn't seem right that we demand that they have more impervious area than is necessary, especially now that they're going to be charged for it.
So for tonight, the board has the memo regarding, motions,
Mhm.
and draft recommendations. So based on the, last meeting for Article 37, there was, the board, determined that they did want to include, the phrase change in any use, or, add the word or tenant. So this motion in,
Sorry, I didn't hear a couple of words there. The board determined that they,
that the,
We need to expand on the word use to include tenant as
To
well. so it doesn't-
include- tenant,
yes,
It doesn't include tenant now, but it would expand it to use and tenant.
oh, yes,
And-
you're just saying that addition.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So what you have before you, it would be the revised motion. That will be included in the briefing book. That shows the addition of that word. There would also be this additional explanation printed in the briefing book, along with what the board originally had incorporated with the warrant. Explaining why the board is proposing to amend its motion.
Taking in comment, we changed use in the first case to use or tenant. In the second case, it's new uses or tenant. Should it be new uses or tenants
Sure.
in the same way?
Yep.
Yeah. It is.
So we have to vote on the changes to the amendment first, right?
The board would, vote to move forward with the motion as revised this evening, along with the additional explanation for, and its recommendation for inclusion in the briefing book.
So I'll look for a motion. If we have no more
So
comments,
Second,
and then all those in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed or abstaining? Nope. Okay,
I really like the addition of the provide further documentation and then do joint parking agreement. It's just very simple and clear. So I'm sorry, simple. It's like simple.
You can say it.
Article 38 is the housekeeping warrant article. So there were no changes, so the motion would stand as, affirmative action as printed in the warrant. And, so that will be in the briefing book. And then the planning board's recommendation would also be just to take affirmative action on Article 38 as printed in the warrant based on the explanation provided in the briefing book.
So moved.
second. Abby. And then all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? Nope. Okay,
Article 39 is the same. The board is not proposing any amendments, so the motion would stand as affirmative action on Article 39 as printed in the warrant. And the recommendation would be affirmative action as printed in the warrant based on the explanation provided in the briefing book.
So moved.
Second.
awesome. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? Nope. Great.
Article 40 is the floodplain article. That is the same. There's been no discussion of amending that article, so the motion would be as printed in the warrant. The planning board's recommendation would be affirmative action as printed in the warrant based on the explanation provided in the briefing book.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? Nope. Great.
Article,
Those are all going on the consent calendar, or do you know that, or?
I do not know. The town moderator has not had
Oh, okay.
the
She did have that, but I'll look at
oh,
No, great.
It's your- that's all. I assumed that they
Okay.
were, based upon the
yes,
conversation.
last conversation I
Right.
had was
Except for
those
37.
would be going on
Yeah.
the consent calendar. Article 41 is the citizens petition regarding the wireless overlay district. Mr. Dane is here for, the board to ask any follow-up questions. I think the one question that I was not able to answer is whether you're proposing any changes to the warrant article as part of your motion or not?
No,
Okay,
moved
as printed in the
as
warrant.
printed, yes.
Okay,
And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any. It's, the situation now is when there are only two places that a cell transmission facility that could be built that would improve the reception in Concord Center. One of them is right here. And the other is the Tricon Church, which is not, not included on the zoning map, but had a pre-existing special permit that was issued in 1997. So those are the only two places now. And the purpose of the amendment is to give the zoning board of appeals more flexibility in two regards. One is not to require a professional study to determine whether or not there's a gap in coverage, because that would be number one, self-evident. That if there were no gap in coverage, there probably would be nobody who was interested in building such a facility. And the other is that they have the flexibility to allow the construction of such a facility in any location that they deem to be appropriate, without regard to the 2019 map, which is very severely limits the opportunity to build any facility that would have any usefulness. The town has put out RFPs now a second time for a facility in Emerson, under the Emerson umbrella. And if there were a successful bidder under that RFP, the zoning would still need to be changed, as I have proposed, in order to be able for them to proceed with that facility in Emerson umbrella. you know, if the zoning bylaw is not changed, that will not be possible. I would also add that probably a very extensive and comprehensive amendment to the wireless communications bylaw ought to be undertaken, but that would be a project for the ages. And what we want to do is get a solution and get a change which will actually allow us in the short term to solve the problem that we have.
Sorry, can you just state your name and address for the record?
My
Sorry,
name Henry Dane, 58 Everett Street.
Great, thank you. I will say that, at the direction of the select board, the planning board has committed to undertaking an overhaul of this bylaw next year with the assistance of town council so that it can be brought into compliance with both reality and, federal regulations. So that is something to note as we have part of this discussion.
That is, the reason I did not even begin to talk about that is I know that there would be substantial, not only substantial controversy over that. And what I wanted to do was the minimal change necessary to accomplish what we needed to accomplish, and that was to change only one sentence in the bylaw.
But the sentence, I just want to see if I understand this. Basically, right now we have an overlay district and some spaces are outside of the overlay district. So you want to make it easier for us to go outside the overlay district for a cell tower to be built. And this article would not require a professional analysis to substantiate that there was a gap in service.
That is correct.
Okay.
And I also understand it correctly that currently there are a very, very limited number of places where cell towers can go in. But this would change the bylaw to say that they could go in absolutely anywhere in town with the approval of the zoning board of appeals.
Yes, but subject to the normal conditions, the historic district commission, the normal special permit requirements that it would but not derogate from the purpose or intent of the bylaw, and that it would not be substantially harmful to the neighborhood, and all of those criteria that are applied for special permits in general.
I ask because I'm trying to consider whether this is comparable to other things. For many things in town, you can put residential uses over here, you can put industrial uses over there. And this, maybe Elizabeth, you can help me on this. Are there other things? Would this be giving special dispensation to cell towers to say they can go anywhere that is different from other sorts of things we put in town? I don't mean to put you on the spot. You may not be able to answer that right now.
No, I'm not sure I'm not sure, so currently we have an overlay district. And if a wireless company wants to put a tower outside of the overlay district, they need to provide information,
Special review
a
of
technical study
yeah.
that shows there's a significant gap in coverage. And the Board of Appeals can, move forward and
Right.
Assess an application for a wireless tower outside of the district. If it can be shown there's a significant gap in coverage.
And the gap in coverage is also a like, so this is also what's interesting, I thought, was this is proposing relief. This was proposing relief from the section of the bylaw related to like 7.8.4.2. So that's where the relief comes in, but a requirement of 7.8.4.1 is that you have to show that there is a need. So it's not just, you're not getting away from all of the requirements related to this. It also would have, you'd have to show written documentation that you've tried other places. I mean, this is really. Like, they have to go through like competitors' towers and be like, there's no capacity on those, so we can't use those. It can't have 50% of its capacity outside of the town of Concord. That's not allowed. It seems really crazy what they put in here.
So I'm not trying to argue
no,
that
no.
the current one is sensible,
No,
but I'm trying to.
It's just lowering, it's lowering the bar, the, you can have the bar lowered already. It's just saying it's removing one requirement to lower that bar, and that's the professional study.
I'm
And
trying,
it also pulls the planning board out of it, which I didn't, I appreciate it. Because it goes straight to the zoning board of appeals.
well, but I'm trying to figure out, is does it make it things the right amount easier to be worth jumping ahead and not waiting for next year's, town review with a variety of bodies, such that the planning board would want to recommend affirmative action on this article? That's what I'm trying to get straight in my head.
We have been waiting like for 10 years on this. And the situation is so bad that when people walk out of the Colonial Inn and want to know how to get to the Old North Bridge and they take out their cell phone, they get no signal and can't get directions. When I'm going to someplace out of town, I have to drive out to Bedford before I can get the directions on my phone.
But cell service hasn't been getting so much worse in town. It's that people's expectation is higher. But one thing is different this year than the terrible cell service of quite a few years in the past, which is that the select board has directed the planning board to take up this article and improve it next year, which we will be working on. So I can see clearly you don't feel that that is adequate since you're proceeding with your article. So I take that as given.
I think it's almost criminal that we have allowed the situation to be this bad for so long.
So
Mr. Chairman, I've been recognized.
Yes.
Thank you.
all right.
Okay. So I'm reading the petition and perhaps I'm reading it incorrectly, but it says the board may grant relief from the general requirements contained in the subsection or from any location requirements. So it's also saying that any of the requirements in that subsection can be granted relief.
That's the current bylaw.
That's the current bylaw, yes.
Says that the board may give relief to the list of requirements that are listed in a column or two before that in the previous section. But one of those requirements is not a requirement that it be located in the overlay zone. So therefore, that's a requirement that they cannot waive because it is not a requirement in this section of the bylaw that they are able to waive. Now, I think it's just a matter of, in many ways, of just poor drafting and not really, probably in many cases, what happens is that these complicated bylaws are bylaws that come from professional associations and they get, chopped in order to fit into the local situation. And they don't always do a really great job of having it be consistent.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, sorry.
The thing that makes me uncomfortable about this, and I remember when, there was so much controversy about the cell towers coming into town, and there still remains to be a lot of controversy. To remove the role of an assessment of the gap of coverage or an assessment done by someone besides the zoning board, seems to me to be asking for trouble down the line, and it just doesn't, I guess I don't understand why it's taken so long to get those kinds of assessments. Is the problem that we can't get the assessments done, or is there another problem with this?
Well, the answer is that when you wanna get something accomplished, you don't make it difficult and expensive. You make it cheap and easy. And if the, it would seem to me at this point, it would behoove the town to actually go out and solicit proposals for which the town would pay a carrier to establish the coverage we need, rather than requiring them to pay us for it. You notice how much better the cell phone service was when we had the temporary tower in the parking lot behind Middlesex Savings Bank. The minute they took that away about a week ago, it went from decent coverage from the fact that when I go into my bank account, and my office is right at the corner of Main and Walden Street, and I have multi-factor confirmation, sometimes takes me 3 or 4 or 5 minutes to get that text message across the street from the bank in the center of Concord in order to just do ordinary everyday business. So it's a matter really of urgency, and it ought to be something that we would want to do everything we could to facilitate, rather than to continue to regulate in a way that is not useful. Whatever the problems are with regard to people's concerns, the tower that has been approved now in the landfill will have the same impact on people's brains as the ones that people complain about. And there are now 6 or 7 cell towers on the top of Emerson Hospital. And I know that because I negotiated the leases for all of them for the hospital. I know what a cell tower looks like. I know what the leases look like. And by the way, the lease that's attached to the RFP doesn't look anything like any lease for a cell tower I ever saw. So anyway, it's something that requires attention, but there is real urgency, and this is considered, I think, by most people in Concord as being something that's been so bad so long that they've almost taken it for granted.
So my question is specific. How long did the studies take? How much do they cost? And how often have they been indicated to be a barrier?
Oh, I'm sorry.
How long did the studies take? How much do they cost? And how often have they been indicated to be a barrier to
I have
applications?
no idea.
So that's my issue, is that, we're kind of. I'm of the mind of the select board has directed us to take a comprehensive look at this with town council. I understand, we all acknowledge the problem. Nobody is disregarding the problem. My thing is that, is this actually the solution to the problem? If we don't have any information that says that removing these studies will actually increase the number of applications or RFPs or what have you, then yes, it's kind of maybe low hanging fruit, but are there unintended consequences? I would like to take a comprehensive look at this. We haven't done that. So I'm not comfortable moving forward with it with an endorsement from the board. Other people may feel differently, but that's my
Well,
position.
the board is free, the zoning board of appeals is free to ask for any information that they think is relevant, which might include having somebody do a professional study, but it isn't required. And in the case that we're talking about, it is as plain as the nose on your face that there is a gap in coverage. And we don't need a lot of technical experts to tell us that you get lousy cell phone coverage in the center of Concord.
But we also don't know that requiring that study or report has actually had any impact on whether or not we build towers.
Well,
I
then
thank you
why-
for
then
that
why-
question,
then
because
why-
that's
then
what I was
why
trying
retain
to
it?
get at.
Then why eliminate it?
Well,
You know?
Because it's.
So
it's
that's
exposure.
I mean,
my overall position.
I also, where there's not an indication that it's gonna solve a problem, is it a fight you wanna take on at town meeting? And that's where we're actually planning as a board to go after the issue next year, do we collectively, is it in our best interest as a board and as, strategically go out there and start a fight or egg on a fight that we may just say, look, we're gonna eliminate it all next year. Well, why did we litigate this last year? Like, we've already been here, it's the way, I don't know, that's the way I've been looking at it, is where there are so many structural problems with this bylaw that are just seem so problematic, that where there's not evidence, as Abby pointed out, that it's gonna solve anything, what's the value, other than to say we're moving forward and doing something?
Well,
Sorry, go ahead.
it also seems to me that if all you're substituting is that, for a business person, instead of having a route by which they understand that they can get approval, now you're just gonna say, oh, you have to go before a board. And there are 5 people or however many people on the board, and you just have to hope that they see things your way. It doesn't really remove any barriers. They could ask for that study. They could ask for 27 other studies. So I'm not really
That's
sure
for a
that it
3-day
would,
balloon flight.
assure a business person that they have improved prospects of getting approval at a lower cost.
And not only that, but as you just said, the certainty of knowing what they're getting themselves into. Yeah.
So I would say, I'm not sure that in the short term, it's gonna take away that uncertainty, and it may derail the desire to, as you say, put all of this on the block and study it thoroughly.
I think we should applaud Henry's efforts to try to solve this problem, okay? It's been going on a long time. We
Yeah.
sat in historic district commission meetings where,
For
people broke into tears because they
6,
were
7,
gonna
8
put a
years
cell
ago,
tower
almost
across
10
the
years
street from
ago,
the house,
yeah.
okay? So it's been going on a long time, no question about it. I don't know that, I feel comfortable, sallying forth with a, recommendation on this right now. I think we need to do a little bit more work on it.
Well,
So, okay.
to me, I would say that if you would, if you found that you could support this proposal without removing the provision with regard to the professional study, I would think that would be that would accomplish most of what needs to be accomplished, especially since, as a practical matter, if you look at the RFP for the current RFPs, they essentially require the vendor to provide that information.
Right.
As part of the application. So the board will have that information in front of them, and the town, when they are accepting a bid, will also have that information as part of the vendor's bid. So taking it, and I think that's true of a lot of the features of it. So the board is going to have a great deal of information without that provision being in it. So if you say the planning board is content to support this this article, leaving in place the requirement for a professional study, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and we appreciate that. We appreciate your flexibility. The sense that I'm getting from the board, though, is that we'd like to sort of wait till we have an opportunity to do our own study on it, okay? I think it's a big deal. I hate to put off having it fixed, okay? And I don't think we should give up on trying to find somebody that can meet the requirements that currently exist to get a cell tower. But anyways, just my.
If this gets passed and all goes well, it's still gonna be a year before we have the facility in place. And I've worked on the timeline on this. When you give the fact that the time it takes to get the bylaw approved by the Attorney General, the time that it takes for the town to review the bids, the time in the RFP now, which says that the successful bidder has 60 days to negotiate the terms of a lease with the town and so on, you get way down the
So
road.
I suspect the year is optimistic, Henry.
But
Okay.
that's, I said, if all goes well.
Right.
Okay, so,
Can I ask for a clarification? You keep referencing a lease. Are you talking about the one at the landfill?
sorry,
You keep referencing a lease. Is that the one at the
no,
landfill?
the lease, the
The-
RFP for the Emerson umbrella has
Oh, okay.
attached to it a lease, which
Okay.
it says will be entered into by the vendor and the town, if, with its successful bidder. The one at the landfill also is subject to a lease with the town for the, for the,
No, right, the tower at the landfill, that site is within the overlay district. And while Emerson Umbrella is, not within the overlay district, I think there's, a difference of opinion between, attorneys here and, town council, that initial lease, RFP did move forward based on town council's opinion that, as the bylaw is written, a applicant can come in, request a tower that's not outside of the district if they show there's a significant gap in coverage.
Mhm.
Why Emerson Umbrella did not move forward, was not because of the zoning bylaw. There were other reasons that first, RFP did not move forward. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew the difference between the two.
Can I make a motion on this?
Yeah, sure.
So, I make a motion that we, take no action on this, warrant article currently.
What's that? Take no action or
Yeah,
take
recommend?
no
Recommend.
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 Recommend town meeting take no action on Article 45.
Thank you.
The board's not required to put a reason. But if you want to include a reason, it can be something as
Sorry, you
simple
said
as,
45, it's 41.
oh, sorry, 41. 41. As the planning board has been directed by the select board to update, and the planning board is committed to do a comprehensive review and update to the wireless overlay district, and present amendments to the 2026 annual town meeting.
So that's my motion.
second,
did you say to recommend no action?
That's correct.
Even with the amendment that the,
And
Yes.
we appreciate that, Henry, but yeah, that, I think we're most comfortable with waiting to.
Yep.
Have a go at it.
So then, all in favor?
Aye.
Any abstaining or opposed? Okay, thank you.
But
Thank you.
Henry, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
we appreciate
The project. So,
thank you.
Article 42 is the signed bylaw. Again, the planning board's not proposing any amendments to what's printed in the warrant. So the motion would remain, take affirmative action
yes.
as printed in the warrant, and the planning board recommendation would be take affirmative action on Article 42 is printed in the warrant based on the explanation provided in the briefing book.
So moved.
second.
All in favor? Abstaining or opposed? None? Great.
Article 43 is the accessory retail and industrial uses. I'm not aware, the EBC is not proposing any amendments to that article. So it is moving forth as printed in the warrant. So the planning board recommendation would be as printed in the warrant based on the explanation provided in the briefing book.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstaining or opposed? Nope. Okay.
Article 44 is the commercial parking. And in the memo that I provided to the board, I've been working with the Economic Vitality Manager, Mimi Graney, who's here, and Mike Lawson, the EBC Chair. Based on issues and concerns that were raised at the public hearing, the EBC is proposing to amend the article as part of their motion. The first part of that amendment is to strike section 4.2.3.5. In the article, dealing with mixed use. And I can read that section.
Would you mind?
No, not. That was a new subsection to add in commercial districts, a change in use from a permitted business use to a combined business residence use shall not be required to provide additional off-street parking. So that section is
striking
being proposed to be
Struck from the motion.
struck from the motion. This is striked, no, struck from the motion. Stricken. The other change in the motion was to clarify in footnote 1 regarding issues and concerns raised with that there would not be an increase in square footage of the use or the commercial space. The footnote 1 currently reads, this is a new section that would be added to table 4, a new footnote added to table 4, minimum parking.
So when you say currently reads, you mean as printed in the warrant?
As printed in the warrant, footnote 1 is, in commercial districts, a change in use from a permitted business use to another permitted business use shall not be required to provide additional parking. The motion would amend footnote 1 to read, in commercial districts, a change in use from one permitted business use to another permitted business use that does not increase the square footage of the use or commercial space shall not be required to provide additional parking. The additional explanation the EBC is putting forth is the EBC is proposing to strike section 4.2.3.5 and add language to footnote 1 following concerns that have been raised by the community regarding potential parking issues with the conversion of a business use to a combined business residence use, and to clarify that additional parking is not required when one permitted business use is being replaced by another permitted business use, so long as there is no increase in the square footage of the use or the commercial space. So the planning board's recommendations, you have 3 options, recommend affirmative action. On Article 44 as printed in the briefing book, which would be this amended motion based on the explanation provided in the briefing book, or recommend no action, and whether you provide a reason why or not, or whether the board wants to think about this more, talk about it at your meeting on the 27th. Then the motion could be printed in the briefing book as you defer your recommendation to town meeting, which you would either provide a written recommendation for the town moderator to read, or a member of the board would stand up and verbally present its recommendation to town meeting.
Is there a discussion? Are we ready for a motion?
I would ask you a question. When you talk about one business use to another business use, okay, no additional,
Permitted business use.
okay, so. But it could go from a retail to a restaurant,
Mhm.
and we're saying they don't have to change the parking?
If they don't change the square footage, if this were to pass,
Yeah,
then,
but it makes a huge difference, the usage of the facility in terms of the parking requirements.
well, it does, and this is weighing a pair of pros against a pair of cons, that yes, that would be a detriment to go from a candy shop to a restaurant in terms of restaurants that need more parking. But on the other hand, if we don't do this, then there will be buildings that are simply incapable of providing more parking that will have a much more limited range of possible uses. So we could have empty storefronts because you can't find the taker, or we could have more parking problems potentially.
See, I guess this is so I was just looking at my notes of what came up at
Yeah.
the public hearing, and the significant concern was exactly what you laid out, is that things are going to turn into restaurants and restaurants are different. Which I don't disagree with on a certain respect, but also where these facilities have no parking.
Right.
It becomes a public parking question and how people are permitted to use town lots. That basically, it could become that, you know, if you want to turn it into a restaurant, you'd want to turn the bookshop into a restaurant. You quadruple the number of people who are working there. That may be a question for the select board to start enforcing things like that is only 1 hour parking now. And you have to figure out where those 20 employees are gonna park, because that's not a public issue, that's your issue. And,
But-
and that becomes but it's a question of whether we're the enforcement mechanism of determining whether that's okay or not, because we're not really talking about, to a significant degree, I don't think, the paparazzi development. This is
Right,
really
right. I agree.
downtown that are
Right.
totally reliant on public parking is the real concern. And I just see it as, it personally, if someone wants to use those things, the existing buildings as they stand right now, with no parking and no whatever, and really wanna make a go of it, good luck. Because the person who's gonna invest $150,000 in a new hood system or new vent system to convert, you know, Vanderhoof's into a sit-down restaurant, they're gonna have to figure out a whole lot of other things, and the parking's gonna be like, and the moment the town says that's not acceptable,
But they're also
But
locked into their current use,
is-
because even if they didn't change to a restaurant use, they would, so even if they changed to a use that requires less parking, since they were currently providing no parking, they'd still be out of luck. You'd be locked, they're currently locked into their existing use.
So is the change, so I think striking section 4.2, 0.3, 0.5 is an improvement. I think that makes a ton of sense.
Right.
Is the change that we're trying to effectuate with the second proposed change?
just point of, it's
Yeah.
not us trying to.
No, sorry.
It's they're trying to do and whether
But-
we accept. that
No, but like
that's-
what
yeah.
the town is trying to do,
Right.
like by making this
Well,
change,
yeah.
not planning board.
Right.
But is the change that the collective is trying to make, that what we're saying is that if you've got, I wonder if what it is that if the change in permitted use would, under any other circumstances, not require a change in parking. So let's say bookstore and clothing store have the same parking requirements. If it's that permitted use to a permitted use with the same parking requirements, and those parking requirements have already been waived for some reason, then they don't need
Well,
to make the change. Or is it, like, is that really what we're trying to do? Say like,
Oh,
oh, if
no.
they're just shifting the use, but it's not going to create any additional demand but if you had the bookstore to the restaurant, where it is going to change the demand, then we don't want to allow that.
Well,
That's my question, is what is this trying to accomplish?
I-
no,
I-
because we discussed that, the EVC came before,
Yeah.
and Mimi came before us, and we brought up that exact question, and the answer was
No.
no, not just that. Any change of use, because the incredible lack of flexibility for these, uh, downtown parcels with no
So,
available
I
parking
think
at
there's still
all.
gonna be
So-
just
so we've
huge
had-
concerns about that.
We've had numerous conversations
Yeah.
about this. And basically, the way it is now, if they buy Vanderhurst store and make it into something else, they have to come before us. And they could be constrained because we say it's got 1,000 square feet, therefore you need 4 parking spots. Where are your parking spots? Okay, so it precludes somebody from coming in, or at least they come in and they have to go through this whole process, okay? What they're trying to do is get away from that, to say that, okay, you can come in. It isn't their intention to overload an area with parking, I know that, but the problem is, the way it's written, it could, okay? It could change the dynamics of a parking situation. If they change Vanderhoof's into a bookstore or something like that, it's no big deal, okay? But if they change Vanderhoof's that's got 3 stories into some sort of a boutique restaurant, you know, you could have 100 seats in that restaurant.
So I don't feel that I personally have all the information I would need of economic analysis to understand the clear detriment
Mhm.
of turning, your example of Vanderhoofs into anything that required more parking. And exacerbating our serious parking problem, public parking problem downtown versus the detriment to the town of having a downtown area that's extremely constrained and what kind of businesses can come in and what kind of changes are possible and how expensive it is when you have to come before boards just to say boo in the morning.
You know, I get all that, okay?
But that is exactly what's going on here. You're right. It could cause a serious problem in parking. And if we don't move forward, it could cause a serious problem in an era when it's really hard to be a brick and mortar store at all. And that's what this article is about, not about making things totally better,
I
but about
understand
picking
all
our
that.
poison.
I understand all
Okay,
that, but, you know.
but yes, it's a real pick your poison article and situation.
That's it. I don't have answers. So it's just a question.
So
So-
do we take no position and just boot it and let the town decide?
No, aren't
We
we
can- we
required
can-
to take a
Do
position?
we,
No,
we
you
have
take
to
no,
take
no.
a position?
No, we can
on every-
affirmatively not take a position, right? We just have to
Well,
choose one of the
there's-
three slots, right?
We can take no action, we can take
Right.
affirmative action, or we can take no position. Like, we don't have enough information.
Aren't we required to give a report on all?
I think
Well, I'm asking Elizabeth,
I am not sure.
I wonder if it's that we recommend taking no action based on, as opposed to like based on opposition to the principle of it.
well, no
It'd be
action.
take no
means
action, no
we
action.
oppose it.
We can,
But take no action on the basis that we don't have enough information to
Well, that-
affirm it, would be the
No
kind of,
position.
Well, we
Yeah,
can.
it's-
Right,
come
oh, so
to
you're
town
saying
meeting.
no action, but are because.
it's not because
not-
we're in opposition to this and we think it's the wrong choice. It's, we're taking no action because we would like to investigate this further type of thing. It's a bit of a splitting the baby type of thing. It's no action, but the explanation is, but if town meeting debates this and decides, like you, like, there's a positive and negative to both, and we think we should move forward with this because we think it's a bear, blah, blah, blah. It's a difference, and it may be a difference without a distinction of like, we're taking no action just because we think this should be up for full debate and we don't have a
I mean,
recommendation.
what we've heard are, from citizens in areas that have tight parking,
Mhm.
that this is very difficult for them. We've also heard from, the business community and for people who want a vibrant, walkable
Mhm.
downtown with lots of experience and opportunity, that this is positive as well. It's hard for us to balance that based on what we've heard, because but town meeting, it seems to me to be the optimal.
The ideal
place
place for that debate.
That's
for
right.
people to make a stand and, so, but I would say if we could take no position, that's what I would recommend. Because I don't see that this is all that detrimental to the existing situation. I'm also not convinced that it's gonna have a,
Positive.
create
It's not a
a,
panacea,
yeah.
and the ultimate solution is we need to deal with on-street parking, which
Yes.
is also not something that's our purview. So
Mhm.
how do we take a position on it? But
So,
that's just throwing it out there.
so what I'm going to recommend, is kick the can down the road, and for the briefing book. So this is somewhat, is what's driving this discussion this
Yeah.
early. Because of the briefing book and not having handouts anymore. Generally, the planning board would be right up to the last minute meeting before town meeting. And, would have your whole written recommendation and it becomes a handout. The question on the planning board taking no position, is one that I would have to, relate to town council. It's not something I've ever had the planning board ask. So my recommendation would be to, at this point for the briefing book, um,
So
defer,
why would we
defer,
take no action?
defer its recommendation to town meeting.
I think the idea is that, I think, true or not, I think I think people consider no action to be a negative endorsement, that if we say no action, we're saying say no to this.
Yeah, and that's.
And that's not really
my
what,
Yeah.
that's not actually my intent either. I would
Right.
like a robust discussion on the floor at town meeting and let the community decide which one of these priorities is more important to them, or if the concerns outweigh the priorities.
But if we defer that, don't we have to make a decision before town meeting?
That's the question.
Well, you ultimately would have to,
Choose one way or the other.
Possibly like on the 27th,
Mhm.
bring this up between now and the 27th. I can ask town
Okay.
council if, if a recommendation that meets the state zoning act and the requirements under law, if the planning board makes a statement that, the planning board believes that, there's two aspects to this
Competing
warrant article.
interests.
One is, the vibrancy and the economic vitality and
Positive impact.
the positive impact, and the other side is the unknown, whether there be unintended consequences, dealing with public parking concerns, and, does not have, sufficient information to make a recommendation to town meeting and takes no position on this article. I don't know if
That's permissible.
if that's permissible. So that's what I would have to ask.
I think I have heard that at town meeting before, no position.
You've heard select board take no position, you've heard finance committee to take no position. It is different for the planning board
Okay,
because
alright.
you are acting under the zoning act. It is a matter of law that says you are required to give a recommendation to town meeting on all zoning articles.
so then if the outcome is that we have to either support it or take no action, recommend it or take no action, recommend no action, then it would be sort of in our, how we describe it at
Mhm.
town
Yes.
meeting. That, because basically what we're asking the town is, are we willing to put up with some parking irritation to have a full downtown? I mean, we're kind of saying that.
Yeah.
And I agree that I think that's something that we can't just decide.
First of all, we don't even know it'll happen. It's a potential problem, but we have to understand that there is a potential for a problem.
Well, that's
And then
true.
the town needs to decide it's willing to take
Right.
That chance.
that chance.
So I don't have a full sense of how my fellow members of the board are leaning, but certainly some members of board seem to be leaning against recommending no action. And since there is some amount of time left, it occurs to me that the EDC, it's hard to predict what the planning board, we don't know what the planning board will say. We don't know what town meeting will say, but the EDC could decide to cut its losses if there would be losses, and change the motion to say only in the case where the new use would not require any more parking than the existing use is required by the zoning law, by law to provide, not the
That-
actual amount they provide.
That's
but
it.
That's
No.
currently the case. in the
Even if
zoning
we change
bylaw.
in use? Well, you get
Yes.
relief, but you have to come for a special permit, don't you?
No, so almost all of the buildings in downtown Concord are considered multi-use buildings. And in the zoning bylaw, you can change from one permitted use to another permitted use when there's no, increase in
And
parking.
parking, oh, sorry,
The no
I
increase in
somehow
parking.
based on that.
So that's
So this
how,
really contemplates when there is an increase in parking.
And the chances
it
of
could.
that,
So wait, why?
I mean,
then-
still, we can't open any restaurants because we don't have any water.
Well, that could
It's
change.
like,
That could,
Well, we want.
We don't have sewer.
that
Yeah.
hopefully will change,
Yeah.
that hopefully will change.
not anytime soon, but
it-
eventually.
It's, but there are obviously other uses besides restaurants that can.
Yeah.
The change from fat face to whatever the cosmetic, that
Whatever
came
theory.
before us because of the formula business
Yes.
component,
Yeah.
not because
Not
of the
because-
change.
Not because of parking.
Yeah.
Okay, I just,
But like if the bookstore left
I
and
remembered
the
we-
clothing store went in,
But
That
those are
wouldn't-
both retail, right?
um, yes.
So that's not a change in you.
I, a retail space that gets turned into a real estate office.
Tesla
That would not
dealership.
have to come.
If
Yeah.
the parking, requirement is the same or less.
Right. Okay.
I mean, I think if you wanted to know how people lean, I would lean in favor of the article because it's been, and with the, with the sense of we'd like the town to weigh in terms of we see a potential possible balance in benefits in terms of economic vitality, but we recognize there's many concerns that people have about parking.
Either way, I would be more comfortable with the planning board giving not just a simple affirmative action or no action, but with an explanation of, we do see that there are trade-offs here, and it's that we think this trade-off is preferable to that one. Whichever way we went.
It's hard,
I mean, we think, we project that it's more likely to come out better without actually knowing for sure.
And I come down on the opposite side of it, where I say, I think this is like the perfect article for like a robust discussion at town meeting. If I was crowned queen of Concord for the day, I would lean against it because of the uncertainty and because I think the only anticipated change of use that I see benefiting from this is something like retail to restaurant. Which brings the largest concerns to the community, largest possible. Yeah, so that would be my, that's what I see being able to take advantage of this is a change in use that would dramatically increase the parking. Because we already allow for changes in use that don't. So that's my anticipation, is that if this is meant to address that specific issue, I can see there being the greatest pushback to that, and my having the greatest concerns that would impact surrounding businesses as well, and therefore defeat the purposes of the economic vitality. So I think this is why this is perfect for town meeting, because there are so many.
we're both gonna be right because.
We're
Yes.
both gonna be
Oh.
right, so I
Discussion
think
will
that
be
puts the
robust.
planning board in a difficult position, because this really will come down to people's kind of individual priorities and beliefs about what will or will not be a driver of economic vitality or parking headaches, and so that's, I think, great for discussion at town meeting. I would not be, based on that, I would not be comfortable recommending affirmative action, just as we
perhaps-
have now.
Perhaps we could get the select board to agree to
Address
Having-
public parking
address
policies.
some of the parking policies, and that would improve our case, but just.
One thing I'll
So,
also say is, I just Googled it, and this is an FAQ from mass.gov, and it does say that if the planning board fails to issue a report with recommendations to town meeting may not act on a warrant article, proposing an amendment, unless at least 21 days have passed from the date of the planning board's hearing. So we do have the ability to duck, just throwing it out
Oh,
there.
because it's been more than 21
Because it's
days.
been
We'll
more than
have-
21 days.
Got it.
So obviously I'm not town council and he can weigh in, but.
So,
But you're
so tell me that again, say it again, please.
So basically the planning board is required to have a meeting. Must hold a hearing on the proposed amendment and issue a report with recommendations to town meeting. That's what we've discussed. If the planning board fails to issue its report with recommendations to town meeting, the town meeting may not act on a warrant article proposing an amendment unless at least 21 days have passed from the date of the planning board's hearing. Basically, it provides the town can move forward if we fail to act.
But since it will have been well over 21 days between the
Right.
hearing and town meeting, we're
Right.
allowed to
A failure to act is
be
permissible.
cowards.
But again, we will have someone who's actually done this before, as opposed to just reading this FAQ and be like.
Yeah, so it allows us to kick the can down the road, which is.
Potentially, the can
Well,
be,
it allows us some
Well, we-
language,
yeah,
a way to describe it that accurately reflects that we don't think it's a bad idea, we just
Yeah,
think
we're
that
not
it needs to
basic-
have a robust.
basically, we're not
discussion.
reporting a recommendation because
Yeah.
we feel a robust discussion at town meeting of priorities is appropriate.
But not, I mean, we always feel that a robust discussion at town meeting is a
In
big
other words,
idea.
that's, this is
But in
outside the
this
purview of the
case,
planning board, yeah.
it's, first of all, it's not our article, and second of all, the pros and cons are so either so neatly balanced or so impossible to project in advance that we don't feel we can say either yay or nay to the town.
So at this time, I'm
This time.
guessing that the board's recommendation in the briefing book is that it defers its recommendation until the
Yes,
town meeting.
Exactly.
I will.
I make a motion that we defer the decision on Article 45.
Recommendation.
Recommendation
Recommendation, thank you.
until then.
Second.
All in favor?
Right.
And then I will follow up with town council on the question on how to word that the planning board does not take a position on this article because, and I will try and summarize everybody's comments.
Did we talk about having Mike come in on the 27th to talk about it or not?
I know he wasn't available
No, I know that, yeah,
tonight, but
right.
But me
yeah,
here.
so, but yeah, I think he said he could come on the 27th if need be.
Of May.
May, yeah.
I mean, do we have any specific questions?
I don't know,
Oh,
that's, I'm just.
I mean,
throwing it out
that's
there.
the thing,
Yeah, I don't
Just
know.
let it go.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming, though. I will say, it's,
Well,
I didn't know if anyone did or didn't, but,
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, Greg.
oh, sorry.
No, I mean, that's fine. I'm just, this is fantastic.
Greg Higgins.
I'm
member.
on the ABC. I
Yeah.
just joined a while back and it's interesting.
more than you
It's
had
very-
imagined.
One thing I would say.
Sorry,
you've
just your,
already
sorry, just your
decided,
name
and I
and
did-
your
Greg
name.
Higgins, 51 Cottage Lane.
Thank you.
Is that the town, in my opinion, should take a look at this, that parking is not a store's problem, it's the town's problem. These stores exist for us to go and shop and buy things and have fun locally and shop locally. And the burden should be on the town, not on these little stores that don't have any parking, so you end up, I mean, if if Vanderhoos decides someday he's gonna, say, this is enough screwdrivers. Who knows what would go in there that we would like or dislike. And maybe it would be a restaurant, maybe it wouldn't be. I doubt it'd be a restaurant, but who knows? But it's a general thought in the center of town, what do you expect these stores to do? And if you look, the board tends to give parking relief.
Mhm.
And let's be honest, when the big nationals come in, like Nero or any of those folks, they get the firepower to win, and the little guy doesn't. So you're not gonna get the little sandwich shop, you're gonna get somebody who can afford to overpower you with legal stuff. So it's just an interesting situation, but it's not an individual store's problem. Sorry, it isn't,
Thank you. And
but great discussion.
Um,
then what up to?
45.
Let's hit the road.
The Concord Housing Foundation is not proposing any changes to the warrant article. So I did not have a clear consensus from the board. I thought you were in favor to recommend affirmative action, but I didn't want to assume. So, but if that is the board's direction, it would be to recommend affirmative action on Article 45 as printed in the warrant based upon the explanation provided in the briefing book.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any standing or opposed? No.
And then, Article 46, at the last meeting, the, board decided, that it would defer its recommendation until town meeting. The petitioner has confirmed that they will be going to a select board meeting on May 12th. And then, coming to the planning board on May 27th. And discussing, I think at that time, there may be an update to whether the select board and the petitioner moving forward with a memorandum of agreement, as well as any other potential changes to the article language as part of the petitioner's motion. So they will have confirmed they will be here on the 27th. So at this point, the planning board's recommendation for the briefing book would be it defers its recommendation until town meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item is unanimous.
I did want to mention, I was in the League of Women Voters, when this was presented, and they did discuss that they were having meetings with the abutters.
Yes.
I'm sure.
Wendy has a comment.
Just an added to follow up, the consent calendar
Yes.
was reviewed with the select board last night. And the articles that are targeted for the consent calendar are 38, 39, 40, 42, and 43.
We expect. So that's, I think, what was indicated. Yeah, what was expected, yeah. And with that, that's the end of that component of our meeting. Missing my appointments.
Planning board liaison and.
Nope.
No, we have an AT&T small cell select board. filing.
Which, so I have to, apologize. That this was inaccurately included on your agenda. The small cell policy does not require comments from the planning board. It requires comments from the planning division. So there is no need for the board to discuss this. The planning divisions, will prepare comments to the select board. I think this is on their agenda sometime in May. But, you know, currently the only comments we have is, no issues, to speak of with the proposed small cell at 143 Sudbury Road. The small cell at 1 Sudbury will need to file, with the Historic Districts Commission. That's our only comments that we have. Okay, but so my apologies for.
No worries.
Oh,
You don't have to apologize
come
for
up so
taking
often.
something off of our
Oh.
agenda. Something you need
I did
to
read the whole.
make
thing.
amends.
But
for.
that was my apology. I do know some of you were reading it, so, but thank you.
The next item, which I guess would come under liaison updates,
Yes.
is the land use working group memo,
Yes.
which was provided.
So the select board chair, sent me an email this afternoon. So this is just an update to the board. There's no discussion, but the select board has moved forward and, created the land use working group. Previously, the planning board designee was not included. They have updated that working group's charge to make sure that there is a planning board designee. So what you have in front of you is the letter, asking the various boards and committees that are listed in the charge to put forth their nomination for their designee, along with the charge. Between now and your meeting on the 27th, y'all can rock, paper, scissors for who really wants to be on the land use working group. But the board would need to vote forward its nomination to the select board for that working group. That's my update.
When is this working group commencing its labors?
I don't know. I'll have to ask.
All right.
The idea is as soon as it can, but obviously it's gonna take a little bit longer now.
Mm.
The target was to get it going in May, but obviously we're adding some.
That's all I have.
When do we change roles in the board?
Um,
Like in the calendar year, when does that happen?
I asked, and the answer was town meeting,
following town meeting.
Following town meeting,
Right.
okay.
even
So-
though it's so late.
Yes.
Okay,
Um,
because that should probably be part of this discussion, right? In
um,
terms of who's
so-
doing what and.
So you're meeting on the 27th.
Yeah,
Generally, it's the last meeting before town meeting
yeah,
that you move forward your last item of business is, would be to move forward and elect a new chair,
mhm,
do you have vice chair?
Yeah.
Chair,
Chair,
vice
vice
chair
chair.
and clerk.
and clerk.
So your first meeting following town meeting, you know, that chair is there, or, other years, the first meeting after town meeting, but that only works a couple of years. I don't, Linda's the only person going off, so Andrew would still be on the board, but generally,
Mhm.
it's the last meeting before town meeting, and then the new chair, takes up right after town meeting.
So you're stepping off,
My term is.
your term's
Term's
over. Okay,
So the board will actually, your first meeting in June will have 2 vacancies.
yeah.
With Mark, moving, so.
Sorry.
I'm I'm devastated you're taking the puppy away from me. But I do know that, Andrew and Wendy, there have been some, green card, volunteer cards submitted. And so they are actively
Oh,
looking
good.
to fill
Yeah,
both
good.
those positions.
Great.
So hopefully that would be, might not be in time for your first meeting, but your first meeting in June, June 17th, is, we've been holding as the public workshop for the combined business residence discussion. So.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That'd be nice for a new chair.
yeah, that's what I thought.
So I guess my question related to this in particular.
Well, this isn't on your agenda.
Oh,
so,
right, okay.
um,
So think about, if you are remaining on the committee, begin to think about what you are interested in doing next year. That is all I was going to say, and we will get together a list of liaison appointments as well, which we can circulate, and we can have it as part of our agenda. Probably next meeting, right?
So-
we can discuss.
In the next week or so, Heather and I will put together, the list of, liaisons, a list of, potential zoning bylaw amendments for the 2026 annual town meeting that we're aware of, like right now, we already, know we have, wireless, potentially combined business residents. And the whole board, will be participating, and providing feedback to the MCI Concord Advisory Board, so I do not expect a single member to, to take that role, since it won't be a actual, planning board project. The MCI Advisory Board will still, be working with a consultant so list of liaisons, which will now include the, land use board. Thank you, Mimi. The land use working group, sorry. And we'll circulate that so people can have an idea.
Okay. Awesome. And if there are no more liaison updates, we'll call this meeting.
I'll just
Oh,
say
sorry.
that I did go to the Magic meeting this morning, which was mostly about trails. But I did ask the question about continuing care overlay districts in the other towns. And Maynard is very interested in creating one. So they've done a lot of research on it, and Bedford actually has one. And I wasn't sure if Lexington said they had one or didn't have one.
I wasn't sure either.
Yeah, but Bedford does have one and it has I started to look at their zoning, how they describe it in there, so. The main issue always seemed to revolve around affordable units,
Mhm.
who would be able to be in this housing.
It would be good to know if Edgerton has an affordability requirement. You could just say,
Yeah.
that's the way cookie crumbles, you have to put it in.
Yeah.
Great, so with that, everybody have a good night who's online.